How's it going, everyone? Today I got 5 creepy stories submitted to me by subscribers that I will be telling you. These stories are pretty crazy and I think you'll enjoy them. So put this on while you're doing something else, or put this on while you're going to sleep, or fully enjoy these 5 creepy stories. Leave a like on the video to claim your free nothing. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And with that being said, let's just jump right into it. So we're going to call a subscriber who submitted the first story Ryan. Anyways, Ryan at this time of the story was a college student, and so the local bar near his college was just too packed this night. So Ryan walked over because it was walking distance, and sure enough, the bar was just the line was crazy long. It was just too ridiculous. So he gets in his car, and he drives to, or he looks on his phone, or he asks kind of a recommendation of like, where's a bar near me? Because, this bar was just way too popular, it was way too packed, and he's just kind of sitting there like, man, I'm not going to wade through this crazy line. So he gets a recommendation from either the internet or someone he was talking to casually to go to this other bar. It was about 15 minutes out, which is a little bit too long, but he still went because he was like, I've already kind of committed to going somewhere else, which, in all honesty, if he waited in the line for the more popular bar where probably his friends were going to be, probably would have taken about 15 minutes as well, and he would have totally avoided this really creepy story. Regardless, though, he still decides that it makes sense for him to go ahead and drive all the way to this bar. So he was kind of going off the beaten path. He went through like some fields that were completely he didn't go on the highway to get to this bar. Like where he was located, it wasn't that it wasn't that rural, but it got really rural quick, which is really interesting. Anyways, so he goes through these kind of grassy fields, and he pulls into this like broken down bar. He wasn't even sure if they were open, but he saw it was like dimly lit. And he was like kind of like, oh, I don't know, man, like maybe there'll be some like fun locals to talk to or something. Like, I really don't know. I don't know, man. I will personally say from my own experience, sometimes like the best time, like you might be thinking like, oh, I want to go to like a college bar so, I can talk to all the hot girls or something. Nah, man, that's low-key overrated. In my experience, like the most fun thing to do is to go to the bar, just talk to the locals, especially if you're not a local. If you're a local, then talk to the travelers that are just coming and stopping in. Like, you'll find really interesting people at these bars, and that's low-key the reason why I do it. Anyways, though, sure enough, the subscriber walks in, sits down, gets like a drink or like gets like a beer or whatever they have on tap. And he's just getting kind of like a really weird feeling about this bar. Like there's something just like internally in him that just feels kind of strange about the whole thing. Yeah, anyways, so it was getting kind of late. One of the reasons why the subscriber, he didn't get into the bar that he usually gets to is because he showed up really late. I think he was just working on some, like, homework assignment and just took much longer, but he wasn't committed to going to sleep. He's like, this is a Friday night, man, and I'm going to have the most of it. Anyways, so it's getting kind of late. It's getting like 12:30. He hasn't been at that bar for that long. He's, like, kind of trying to make some conversation. There was one person at the bar that was kind of normal, but eventually they left. And there's this kind of just this like weird kind of feeling. Like he couldn't really explain it. It was kind of, it was an uncanny, just uncomfortable feeling. Like just something was off. Like there was just something like guttural, this feeling of just like something wasn't right. And it wasn't anything too alarming, but like if he's not having a good time, there's literally zero reason for him to be there. Anyways, so the subscriber, sure enough, decides he walks up, pays for his drink, closes tab, and walks out to go to his car. So as he's walking to the car, remember it's around like 12:31. This is a really small parking lot. In fact, it's not even a parking lot. It's just like a row of parking slots that you can park in. So he's parked closer to the bar, and there's like one other car all the way at the end. And he sees some guy leaning against the car all the way at the end. So this guy was like bigger. He had this big trench coat on. He had this like big hat on, and he was kind of looking down. Very weird vibes. Like I'm not going to be able to describe it. It was really one of those things where you just have to imagine just like, I don't know if you've ever had a moment or experience, and comment down below in the comment section if you have had an experience like this. But if you've ever had an experience where it's just something just is like really, really disturbing, even though like physically it's not really disturbing, if that makes sense. Anyways, so sure enough, right, the subscriber, just feels kind of weird. And he, walks to his car and it's just like not looking at the guy because he kind of feels like, man, like, I don't know, just feels kind of uncomfortable. And I just don't want to look at him, whatever. It's not like there's an actual thing. It's one of those things where it's almost like you're afraid of the dark. Like you don't actually think that there's an issue or that there's like a real problem. It's more just like, you're like, man, but I'm still not going to look at that dark closet, right? You know what I'm saying? Anyways, so he gets in his car, closes the door, puts his key, but then he puts his key in the engine, but he gets distracted by something on his phone. Puts his phone down, looks up, and he hears a knock. So he turns his head to his left, and that guy was knocking like slowly on his car window. And now like his face was looking down, but this guy was probably 65, like an old man. He was like had this like weird smile and like most of his teeth were missing. Like it was seriously weird and disturbing. And at this point, heartbeat goes from like 80 to like 160. He immediately kind of freaks out and just like, if he probably shouldn't have done this for the sake of like the safety of this old man who maybe needed help or something, but it was such a creepy situation. He just like gets in reverse and this like old man starts following him, like literally starts following him. And anyways, the subscriber gets in the car and just pulls out, gets back to his dorm room. It's like 2 a.m. and he just can't sleep because he's like, that was so weird. And his roommate's asleep, so he feels a little bit safer because his roommate's there. But like part of him is like paranoid this guy's going to follow him back or whatever. Anyway, so he decides to go on just like checking on Reddit. So he finds this like local town, or like he looks up the bar on Reddit. He finds like or just on Google, and he finds like a whole like Reddit chain. Like he had to do a little bit of searching. It wasn't the first thing that came up, but if you look down a little bit, you saw like a whole Reddit thread on it. And so many people were saying that they got these weird, creepy vibes from just being there. But then probably, and that would have been like, okay, well, the place is kind of creepy, Connor, who cares? Like, yeah, sure, but like whatever. But the thing that just absolutely made this guy's heart stop was that there was a thread on there that got a ton of upvotes and a lot of people replying to it saying that they had the same experience of a creepy old man who would wait at the end of like the parking lot or would wait in the bar and follow people out and then just like try and break into their cars. So at this point, he was freaking out. The next day, I think the subscriber might have like called the non-emergency police line or something, made a report, talked about the Reddit post or whatever. And he didn't really get that much information after. So yeah, needless to say, he never went back to that bar and stuck to the one popular one. Which, by the way, like if you can find really fun random bars that are off the beaten path with really cool characters. But, sometimes you'll find stuff like this. All right, let's go on to the second scary story submitted by a subscriber. So we're going to call the subscriber who submitted the second story Ben. And yeah, we're actually going to call the good guy one of these videos Ben. So you're welcome to all the Bens watching these videos. Anyways, so sure enough, right, Ben was staying at his family's kind of vacation house / beach house. It wasn't a big house by any means, but it was pretty cool because it was on the beach, which is really, really cool. Anyways, he was staying there, and it's about an hour from his house, but he was staying there with his friends. And for one of the nights, his parents, who didn't live that far away, said that they could have a sleepover in the house. They were all like kind of 15 or whatever, and they really wanted it to like just be them so they could almost like be in charge of the house or whatever. And the parents were kind of really, they were not so into it at first, but then with some convincing, they were like, okay, well, you guys are responsible. There's no reason for us to not think that there's, any reason you can't be doing this. There was a neighbor that we know. It just so happens that the neighbor wasn't there that night, but we'll get into that later. So they're like, that should be fine. So anyways, in the very beginning, it's pretty cool. It's Ben, Will, and Andrew. So the beginning of the day was actually pretty cool. They're on the beach the whole day, or they get there later. They're dropped off by like the parents, 45 minutes away, not necessarily an hour. So still close enough the parents could drop and leave. Anyways, they get there kind of later in the day. They're on the beach, whatever. They then go inside. They make their dinner, but then they bring it out to the beach because like there's no rules. It's just the kids. And then they put on a movie. Things are pretty cool out there. Anyways, the parents say like, hey, if there's any problems, like you can call us, but you can also call the neighbors. And then they give the 2 numbers and they're like, if there's anything at any time, it's cool. I think the parents are still kind of tripping out about it a little bit. Anyways, it gets kind of late. It's like 10:30, 11 at night. They're starting to get ready to go to sleep. They've had a great day, whatever. So they go to bed. That's when Ben wakes up at midnight to kind of a strange noise from outside. So he's immediately spooked because they're in the house alone. So he wakes up, he wakes up Will, he wakes up Andrew. He's like, guys, listen. So yeah, Ben gets up his 2 friends, Andrew and Will, and he's just kind of like, guys, I heard something. And they're kind of a little disoriented because they're just woken up from their sleep and they're just like, what? Like, what do you mean you heard something? He's like, I don't know, I just heard a weird noise. And they're like, dude, we're on the beach. It's probably an animal, could have been a wave hitting a rock. Like, I really just don't think in the middle of that sentence, they heard a bup, 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 bup. I can't recreate it that well with just my mouth, but essentially imagine the jiggling of a door handle. At that point, they all froze. Because what was potentially, Ben's imagination, the sound of an animal, or the sound of a crashing wave was now very clearly, and there's a chance it could have been something else, but now it was very clear. Sorry for burping. It was very clear, totally ruined the atmosphere there. But now it was very clear that someone was trying to break into the house. So at first, Andrew's like, it's probably one of the neighbors, man. It's probably one of the neighbors. And Ben's just like, man, why would one of the neighbors want to break into the house? Like, I don't know, to check on us? You don't think that they would call and you think that they would check in on us by breaking into our house at 12:15 in the morning or at night? Does that make any sense to you? He's like, okay, fine. I'll call the neighbors. And, Ben's like, should I not call my parents? And he's like, well, your parents are farther away. If someone's trying to break in, we got to figure this out right now. So they call up the neighbors. The phone rings. Nothing. And they're like, oh my God, the neighbors must be asleep. After this story or after this day, they learned that the neighbors were actually away. And that, I guess the parents just assumed that the neighbors would be here, which is kind of an oversight, but whatever, right? Yeah, so sure enough, there's no response. And then they hear once again the jiggling of another door handle. But instead of one being far away, it was the front door handle. So at this point, they start freaking out. So immediately Ben calls his mom. He's like, Mom. And she's like, what? It's like, oh, well, sweetie, what's going on? Because she's also disoriented. It's like, someone's trying to break into the house. And she's like, wait, what? So immediately she starts freaking out, gets up, Ben's dad as well. They're all kind of panicking a little bit. I think Andrew goes into the kitchen, grabs a kitchen knife or something. They're all freaking out at this point. So anyways, mom's like, we're getting in the car. We'll be there right away, but you guys need to call the cops. At this point, Ben is freaking out, calls 911. They say, what's up? Someone's trying to break into a house. They're like, okay, we'll send someone there. And the thing is, they're kind of in a remote location, so the cops are still going to be 5 to 10 minutes. And the parents are going to be 45 minutes plus because they still have to get in the car, get situated, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, Ben calls his mom again and said, hey, did I just call the cops? They're going to be 5 or 10 minutes away. And she's like, you guys need to go into a room, turn off all the lights, and lock the door. Sure enough, right? They go into a room, turn off all the lights, lock the door. But the thing that was super creepy is that there was still a window, meaning that in theory, this guy could have broken in through the window. So they're sitting there completely terrified. Andrew goes on his phone, and Ben looks at him and whispers, dude, you can't be on your phone, the lights. He's like, I'll turn the brightness down. And that's when Will's phone gets a Clash of Clans notification here. Dun, 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 dun. They're like, dude. He's like, oh my God, my ringer's on. I'm sorry. They'll start tearing up, crying a little bit. The longest 5 minutes of their life. And that's where they hear a bump, 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 bump on the door. So this was not someone trying to break in. It was an official knock. So sure enough, right, they're it's so-and-so, county sheriff, whatever. And they don't respond. They're like, all right, knocks again. It's just the sheriff office. We're going to come in. So at this point, they're all freaking out because I think they were so paranoid, and rightfully so paranoid, but they were so paranoid that this was just the intruder trying to be all official, assuming that he thinks oh, they'll open the door for the cops. And anyways, they hear the door break in and they're all freaking out. They're crying a little bit. And that's when, sure enough, like you hear another knock, and then it's like almost very clearly this point of sheriff's voice, like, "Hey, are you boys in there? We got a call. We're here. My patrol officer, whatever, is scouting around the house. We haven't found anyone yet." And at this point, Ben probably shouldn't have said anything because it could have been the intruder's like, "How do I know that you're the cops?" And the cop's like, "Son, you can look through the peephole, I guess." So Ben very timidly gets up and like crawls over to the peephole, looks through, and sure enough, it is the sheriff. And maybe the intruder dressed up as a sheriff, but at that point, like, I guess Buddy's just gonna win. So he opens the door and the cop comes in, kind of explains the situation. They talk back and forth. The other patrol, there's another cop car that comes. So they're like, there's two cops outside with flashlights looking around. Eventually the parents come. Everyone's kind of freaking out a lot. They file a report, and the cops are like, we don't see anyone. You could stay here if you wanted. And the mom's like, no, they're coming back with us. So they're in the car ride. Ben's telling the crazy story to his parents. And needless to say that they're not going to be left alone in that beach house probably ever again. And I don't think that Ben and his friends really wanted to go back to that beach house anytime soon anyways. All right, on to the third creepy story. So we're going to call the subscriber who submitted this story John. So this story happened during FaceTime, and it's probably one of the freakiest stories I've ever heard, and still one to this day that I can't totally explain, but I'll try to and have my own theories at the end. Anyways, this happened during quarantine, so during the kind of like the late 2020 period. So John wanted to FaceTime, his friend Sarah. And they've been talking for a long time. Well, they actually started chatting back before quarantine happened, and they were committed to, staying in touch. Quarantine was a difficult time for a lot of people. A lot of people felt lonely. A lot of people felt isolated, and, they were no different. So this all happened one night. So anyways, the subscriber, John, decided to FaceTime Sarah. And it was like around 2 a.m., but if you guys remember during quarantine, well, let's just say that I didn't have the best sleep schedule, and I know a lot of you guys also did not have the best sleep schedule, when basically your classes, you could barely be there and still do just fine. And the only thing you could do was call your friends and play video games. So yeah, to say the least, my sleep schedule was pretty bad then too. So anyways, he FaceTimed her like he usually would around 2 a.m. So the call connects. This is where things got weird. So Sarah was just like staring at him like with a weird smile, like weirdly smiling, and was nonverbal, did not speak. It's kind of weird. At first, like, John thought it was funny. He's like, "What's up with you?" But after a little bit of like chatting back and forth, not chatting back and forth, of chatting to Sarah, like a little bit of a pause after he said, "What's up with you?" things got a little weird. John kind of realized something was like definitely kind of wrong here. So he was like, hello, like, are you frozen? But clearly Sarah wasn't frozen because her smile would move a little bit. It wasn't glitchy. It wasn't frozen. And you could hear this like fan humming in the background. And then all of a sudden, like her face like glitched out as if it was one of those like deep fakes, which the deep fakes are really scary. They're getting a lot better now with AI. And the fact, here's something I saw. It says, if you see less AI content, that just means that the AI content got better. So this was back when like deepfakes were scary, but it also like they weren't as good. So her face like glitched out as if it was like a deepfake or something was wrong. And John's like heart starts to race. He just feels really uncomfortable as like this was really weird. Anyways, suddenly the screen froze and John texts like, "You good?" to Sarah. And then the FaceTime call ends. And almost immediately, Sarah replies, not almost immediately, sorry, I'm rereading this wrong. She replies a couple hours later saying, "What do you mean?" He said, "You were acting really weird on the FaceTime call." And she, sends back a text with like a question mark. And he's like, "Yeah, you were kind of like, you weren't responding, and then you just kind of glitched out." And she said, "I've been asleep for hours." So at this point, like he calls her again. She's like so confused, looks totally normal, doesn't have that weird glitchy thing anymore, isn't smiling, and there's also no humming of a fan in the background. Still one of the craziest, creepiest stories to this date, and it could have been like a deep fake or something. I just don't even know. Leave your comments down below of what you think it could be, because pretty crazy. Okay, on to the next scary story. So this subscriber, who we'll call him Jack. Anyways, Jack was flying home from college. Gets to the airport, you know how it is, like it's always like it's crowded, it's loud, it's just like it's always a mess. So finally he gets in line and gets on the plane, feeling good, puts in his like headphones and is just preparing to watch the downloaded YouTube videos that he has on his phone. And that's when he gets an airdrop request from a random iPhone. And, that's one thing, like when I flew to Iceland with some of my buddies because we did a camping trip and we went on a camper, since there's no internet on the plane, or at least I'm not going to pay for that, like crappy internet for way too much money. Hell nah, thank you very much. I'm good. We would airdrop like screenshots of like the Notes app. So that's how we would communicate back and forth. I'd type something and then I'd screenshot it and then airdrop it back and forth because airdrop works even if you don't have internet. Anyways, so Jack gets an airdrop. And it was two things. The first thing was, once again, like a screenshot of a Notes app. And the second one was a photo. So the screenshot of the note says, accept this if you want to live, which is very alarming if you're on an airplane. And the second one was this like blurry selfie. And it looked like it had been taken from like inside the plane. And it was too blurry to really make anything out. But one of the creepiest parts, because first of all, his heart rate is up like 200 beats per minute. He is freaking out because he doesn't even want to turn around because he's going to see something weird or I don't even know. It's just so creepy. And he looks at the photo closer and he swears that he can see the back of his head. It's too blurry to really know. It could have just been like someone pranking him or something. It could have totally been a prank, but this is not something to prank about. Especially on an airline, man, like do not troll, do not mess around with any of this. That is serious business, dude. So he immediately turns around, even though he's nervous, when he sees that. He looks behind him. No one was looking at him. Behind him was a family with a baby. The mom was taking care of the baby. Another one was an old man who's completely asleep. Another one was a little kid on his iPad. Like, no one looked suspicious. Like, there wasn't, like, some kind of evil guy with, like, an eyeglass petting his cat like he's some evil supervillain or something. Or some creepy guy who's, like, looking at him spookily. Like, dude, it just, like, looked like a bunch of normal people. So he quickly turns around, hits his, like, the button of, like, the flight attendant. And so he goes to, like, the flight attendant comes over. He's like, you got to look at this. Someone airdropped me something. She's like, uh-oh. He goes to his phone. He can't find the photos. He can't find it. Like, he must have accidentally deleted it or something. He doesn't even remember doing that. He's like, never mind. So he sits there. It's the most uncomfortable flight of all time. He's so nervous, so scared, so uncomfortable. But anyways, the flight's done, gets off, is so nervous, runs to the airport security, explains the story, and they're like, okay, do you have the photos? He's like, I don't know, they must have been deleted or something. So anyways, they decide to, file a complaint or whatever, and they take it seriously, and they look at his phone, so they go through the records, and they just can't really get that much information. And it has been, since that event that happened many, many years ago, Jack didn't fly for like 3 years, and the first time he flew again, he was so paranoid and so nervous, and still to this day, he's really uncomfortable flying, because that is creepy. Guys, I'm going to be honest, that was probably just a prank, and he probably just accidentally deleted it for some reason or just couldn't find it. But also, guys, please do not be pranking like that. Like, that is really, really serious nature. Do not do anything like that ever. Anyways, on to the final creepy story. So this story is absolutely chilling. So it was submitted by a subscriber, and we're going to call this girl Ava. Anyways, so Ava was having a sleepover when she was 13. She's now 20 and still remembers this story vividly. She had her two friends over, Emily and Lily, and the three of them were watching horror movies, which for the following to be so creepy, like definitely the worst movies to watch beforehand. Because whenever like you're watching a horror movie, like you can literally just hear like a normal noise and be like, oh my God, it's a murderer. He's got an axe. So like you're already on the edge, like 100%. So it definitely wasn't a good thing there. Anyways, at this point, it's 3 a.m. And they were supposed to go to bed at like 10 or whatever, but they were asleep in the basement. So, the dad wasn't coming down to check on them or anything. Just because like, okay, you guys should go to sleep at 10. But also kind of knew that like, they're going to do what they want to do. There is something pretty fun about having the sleepover. Like, I remember when I was a little kid, I do not pull all-nighters. They make you feel terrible. Do not do it. I almost did it for one of my exams, and I almost failed the exam because I felt so garbage, and I didn't retain anything. It was awful. It's a bad idea. Never do it. But I will say, when I was a little kid, like fifth grade, fifth grade isn't a little kid, but when I was much younger, when I was in fifth grade or whatever, having like trying to pull an all-nighter and sneak around the house is really fun. Anyways, so it's around 3 a.m., and that's when they hear a knock at the front door. Totally startles all of them. They're all just kind of sitting there, shaking, nervous, and they look at each other just like, do we tell my dad? Like, what do we do here? Do we bother him? Do we not? Like, I just don't know what to do. Super valid, understanding answer, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, there's a knock on the door, but who the hell is knocking on the door at 3 a.m.? You know what I'm saying? Anyways, eventually Ava's like, I have to go tell my dad, and I'll just pretend like I was woken up, or I was up anyways. Goes upstairs, wakes up the dad, and the dad wakes up all like, what's up? Are you guys okay? She's like, yeah, like I happened to wake up to go to the bathroom, and I heard a knock on the front door. Can you check it out? And he's like, yes. Because the dad's on edge, because who is knocking on the door at 5:30 in the morning, man? Like, that is genuinely, that's witching hour, bro. I'm not, like, no one's going to be trying to do, like, door-to-door sales. Like, hey, man, sorry for waking you up and startling you and probably having you, like, bring a kitchen knife to the front door because I'm, like, knocking on your door at 3 a.m. But do you want to buy some of my life insurance? I feel like that's exactly how you'll get a door slammed in your face, man. Anyways, so the dad goes to the door and checks it out, opens, like, looks outside, doesn't see anyone. Anyways, he goes upstairs and says, okay, you might have heard something. It was probably the wind. It was probably an animal. I know you're probably scared, but try to go back to sleep. Anyways, so they're all sitting there. At this point, Ava, Lily, and Emily cannot go back to sleep. So they put on, like, a nice TV show, just, like, to be comforting, whatever. And that's when they all hear a knock on the door again. And this time, the dog in the house won't stop barking. So anyways, the dad's already up at this point. They're walking, all three of them are walking upstairs to go talk to the dad, and he's already down, like walking down, like, I heard that too. Goes to the front door again, nothing. So he says, hey, girls, like, this is really weird. This is uncomfortable for me as well. Do you guys just want to sleep upstairs in Ava's room so we're on the same floor in the second floor? And they all totally agreed, went up there, and eventually, like, they, like, locked the door, locked the windows. They got terrible sleep, but eventually they went to sleep, and then they all woke up the next day. Yeah, so anyways, the next day, like, they're downstairs, they're having breakfast, dad's making them breakfast, feeling super, like, but something was obviously off, something was weird. Ava's friends leave, and, Ava's like, oh, like, that was really weird last night. And Ava's dad was just like, yeah, but, like, wasn't really talking about it. Something was clearly up. And later that day, like, police come looking around the house, scouting it out. And also for the rest of that week, there's, like, a police car, like, outside their house during, like, the late hours. So Ava would ask about it, and, Ava's dad's like, oh, it's a security precautions, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Whatever. So many years later, when Ava was 18, so much older, 5 years later, she asked her dad, like, hey, like, I don't know what was up, but I was on Netflix, and I saw one of the horror movies we were watching that night all those years ago, and it made me think, like, what even happened that day? Like, it felt like there was way too many police, way too much, like, investigation for just, like, what could have been an animal. So Ava's dad's like, all right, I got to sit you down. So she's like, yo, what? What the hell? What the helly? What the hell? Like, what is going on right now? So sure enough, right? She sits down. Ava's dad's like, I never really told you more of the details just because I knew you were safe here. We had the police investigate, and we didn't find anything of it. And Ava's like, yeah, I kind of remember, like, all of a sudden, mom started driving me to school, and then you guys weren't as cool with me, like, being out for a little bit. He said, yeah. Well, here's what happened that night. You know how we have a security camera? She's like, yes. Well, when I checked it, Ava, I don't know how to say this, but, while no one was at the door when we looked, there's this man standing at the end of our driveway, edge of the yard, whatever, perfectly still for 2 hours. The only times he moved was to ring the doorbell, and he was just staring the whole time. Ava's heart absolutely sunk. Her heart rate, or pit in her stomach, heart rate through the roof, just like, oh my God. And she's like, oh my God, Dad, like, and she's like, we did an investigation. Later on, like there was like another old man who was like arrested for trespassing, and he moved, and like they think he matched the character, but they're not sure. But, you've been like, yeah, I couldn't tell you that. It would absolutely like freak you out so much, and that's why we had to be safer. So yeah, Ava went off to college shortly after, which was probably good timing because Ava's like, for the following months where she was like over the summer until she went off to college, she felt so uncomfortable in the house after learning that. What would you guys do in that situation if you're the dad? Would you tell Ava right away? Would you move? Or would you do exactly what he did?